before I let that beat drop, I just want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Late Afternoon Show. It's your boy, Tim, Mr. Meaningful Work. Let's get these vibrations, baby. Let's go. Yo, it's a whole vibe in here on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome. We are just letting folks get into the live stream. If you're joining us on LinkedIn, if you're joining us on YouTube, this thing is telling me its Facebook isn't working. It's okay. We'll post a recording on Facebook later, but let us know where you are joining us from today. Put your city, your state, joining us in the middle of the day on, this is actually the mid-afternoon show, not the late afternoon show today, but let us know where you're joining us from. Let's vibe, baby. Can you guys believe we are almost into October? We have flown by this entire year and we're about to slide into October. I can't believe it. But anyway, we're about to get this show started in about a minute. I want you to tell your family, your friends, your enemies, your brothers, your sisters, your coworkers. It's lunchtime in California. I'm sure it's close to closing time on the East Coast. Tell them come through. We got some heavy hitters on the show today. Let's go. Seized the good opportunity. Electric magnetism in the air. Caught me out of nowhere. Oh, I'm buzzing like guitars and rock and roll. You give me those good vibrations. We play this song because we are all about the vibes, all about the good vibrations. I am so excited that we are so deep into season 4. It's going to be a party this entire season. So don't mind me. Join along for the ride. We're starting in 20 seconds, guys. Let's go. Vibrations. All right, I'm gonna cut you guys off because I would just keep partying all afternoon if I could, but I can't because some folks have to go back to work. I was literally, if my boss sees this, I was literally in a meeting. I was literally in a meeting before this, and I was like, yeah, we're doing our one-on-one, and I was like, yeah, what's your afternoon look like? Oh, I have a podcast recording, and I'm traveling later on today, and we're coming close to the edge, and I'm setting up the podcast stuff, and I see my guests are in there, and he's like, okay, I just gotta be patient, and then as soon as we were done, boom, we jumped in, and we were able to have this meaningful conversation with Crystal and Jeremy. Guys, if you know the lengths that I went to, I got a phenomenal recommendation for Crystal, and I was like, yo, I need to have her on the show. We'll talk about that in a second because I don't want to waste any more time. I want you guys to see the stars of today's late afternoon show. Hold on, where's my audience at? Audience, where are you? All right, settle down. What's up, Crystal and Jeremy? How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Thanks for having us.
Feeling some good vibrations over here.
That's some good vibration. I should have made you guys dance in and just see how you guys bust a move on a Tuesday afternoon. I don't know.
We'll have to do that in the next one.
I would have signed up. Maybe we'll do that for the next one. We'll have you guys come and do like an electric slide in or something. How's the week going for you guys?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Starting off pretty strong here.
That is good. Where are you guys? You guys are on the East Coast?
Yeah, so we're in Atlanta, Georgia. Obviously, we talked about this coming in, but we're husband and wife. We're in the same house in different rooms. So
you guys are co-entrepreneurs. So you're running something. Jeremy, you're running something. How is that? First of all, like, how is that being two entrepreneurs in the same home? Crystal, we'll start off with you, and then we'll hear from Jeremy. What is that like?
It's pretty awesome. I mean, I think it's really great when you have a partner who can completely understand like what you're doing, and you can have those kinds of conversations, and you can dream together with kind of no limitations around things like work schedules, or like if we want to plan a vacation, I mean, we run it. So we just figure it out.
I love that. I love that. What about you, Jeremy? How's it for you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I'd say flexibility is a big part of it. I mean, in a typical work environment, maybe you have a 9 to 5, so you have to work within those constraints. Whereas being entrepreneurs, we can, work really long days through weekends so that we can then immersively take off at the same time. So being able to control our lifestyle from that standpoint's been pretty awesome.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I got to give hats off to folks that like when husbands and wives can like work together, like not just be together, but work together. Like that's a whole nother level of relationship goals right there. Like that's, they say your business is like your husband or your wife, or like, it's kind of like that partnership. But when you like marry that into an actual relationship and you're making it work, like that's a whole nother dynamic. So kudos to you guys. I want to ask you guys this question of, normally we'd have like an introduction, we'll read off the bio and we'll do those things, but I would love to hear from you guys. What are you famous for? Maybe we'll start off with you, Jeremy. What are you famous for in your circles? It was like, oh, Jeremy Segal. Oh, Jeremy. Oh, that's the dude that, how would they finish that sentence?
All right. Yeah. It's sort of multifaceted because before I started my podcast, maybe like 2 years ago, I never shared online. I pretty much never posted or logged in on Facebook, non-existent in the online world. But I was an entrepreneur and I'd already gone through a couple businesses. So really, unless you personally knew me, you really didn't know what I was good at. And so for the close friends, they knew I was good at entrepreneurship, business strategy, seeing gaps in marketplaces, market trends, futurist type stuff. And then with the podcast, I was overcoming my barriers to sharing. So I've interviewed over 80 full-time social media influencers and deep dove into why they're sharing. So with one of my businesses, I grew over 200,000 social followers. So, I knew social media, but I was behind the scenes. So I could talk to these full-time social media influencers and be on the same level, just not from the vulnerability standpoint. So the past like 2 years, I'd said I'd be more known as that side of things because that's what my internet facing side of things are. And now they're sort of coming full circle and coming back to bringing in the entrepreneurship into the influence side. But it's sort of been a transition for that.
My guy. So on the business side, you got spidey senses for like trends and what's going on and strategy and things like that. But then, in order to overcome your own, call it apprehension for like sharing and things like, you decide to talk to folks who do that, like that's their business, and now you've got a successful business as a result of that. Did I hear that right?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm uncomfortable sharing and I'm surrounding myself by people that sharing in big ways is not a big deal, that starts to rub off of you over time. And now here I am as a guest on a podcast, which I would have never done 2 years ago before starting mine. So I definitely think that helps a lot. And I think what you're doing has the same effect. When you talk to people about meaningful work, you're only surrounding yourself by people who are going to be, caring about that. That's going to rub off on you. And, as time progresses, that all comes together full circle. So I definitely think that's true.
Dude, I could have a whole section about that whole piece right there of you leaning into the area that talking to the folks that are strong in the area that you're not as strong in and you want to get stronger in, and how that effect that has. That's a whole chapter in the book right there. We'll come back to that. Crystal, what are you famous for?
Wow, just as complex of an answer, I guess. And I think that's the cool thing is I feel like if I was to complete Jeremy's sentence, it's like serial entrepreneur, hands down. And I think if I was trying to sum me up, it's like I'm always known for kind of building understanding and maximizing people's potential. And I think at the end of the day, just to be clear, we both have our own businesses,
Yeah.
and that's actually helped the couple part.
Yeah.
We share a lot of the same values and flexibility in life, which helps. But we have our own businesses, and that's been a choice. And now that we've been together for 10 years, and that's maybe now when we start thinking about, well, what if we did a joint thing? And so it's definitely not an instant leap. But in terms of what I'm famous for, I think it depends on who you ask. And that's what's so cool about the world today is there's so many ways you can make a difference and who you can impact. I think like in the training world, I'm famous for designing for modern learning and learning cluster design model, which is a whole thing about how me and my co-creator, Lisa MD Owens, we're changing how we all design learning and think about learning. But if you go talk to the OD people, then they've got different things that I'm famous for. If you go talk to the keynoting world, they all know me from my TEDx talks and the millennial myth and bridging gaps between generations. And so it's just a very, and then in the organization development space, it's much more about, self-actualization and burnout and how are we navigating the digital age. So that's something that I think is so cool today is there's definitely a common thread in there of I'm always trying to help people become really more grounded with themselves and really capture their potential and not feel stuck. But it's like there's so many different ways I want to make that impact. And then just recently, like I started out as a chemical engineer. And so for the last year, I've been co-authoring a book on engineers leading change. And so now I know the engineering community is going to see me differently, see me from that lens. But it all comes down to change, making a difference, maximizing potential, really getting people to live in the now and do that very intentionally for themselves. Those sorts of things.
I just had a picture of Crystal as like one of those secret agents that just opens a drawer and has like 17 different passports. Not talking about like fake IDs and stuff, but you just have like, all right, I'm gonna be this today.
Yeah, I question that sometimes. I've even asked her, and she tells me it's not true, but multiple languages, you never know.
Yeah, definitely I think that's such a great analogy. It does feel like, and it feels just as privileged as that, as like you have a passport to another country or another world, another culture. And I think that's part of what makes my life so exciting to me is that I get to learn about how these different fields and industries work. I know, because I'm otherwise I'm someone who very easily can get bored. So it's a privilege to carry those passports to make a difference or a change.
I love it. I did a recording with another guest that's going to be on the show that I actually met through Jeremy's platform on the AIT. And I was talking with her, and she was talking about the different universes. Like, all right, so you have like the coaching universe, and you have like you were talking about the training and development universe. You have even if you have an influencer universe. You have, and I know Jeremy, you were doing some cryptocurrency and technology and things like that. And so you have these different universes and ecosystems and the things that, like the people that contribute to that, and the infrastructure that contributes to that, and just being able to have perspective. One of the things I love about travel, and we were just kind of staying on the passport theme here, is that it just opens your world. Like it just opens your eyes to everything that's possible and like your place in the greater scheme, like in the larger scheme of things, and how you can contribute to that. And so the fact that in these 3 boxes or in these 2 boxes, there are so many universes represented here. and all of those universes are under the same roof in your home. Like that is just amazing. So I want to ask you guys something about, so you guys have, varied experiences, different tracks of how you got to where you're going. Without like explaining the whole story, if you were to look at your life right now, like the stage that you're at right now, and say, there is one thing I would not have done, what would that be? Either of you can go first, at whoever thinks of it first. One thing I would not have done.
I mean, I would say it's hard to say that because you don't become who you are without those failures. But I mean, I've had opportunities because of my college degrees. But sometimes I do think that if I didn't have my college degrees, I would have started sooner, from a full entrepreneur perspective. So that one I'm a little torn on. But, again, like if I didn't have these degrees, I wouldn't have been a CFO at a young age of a company before becoming an entrepreneur because they saw those degrees. So like some of the levels of experience that I got was because of that. So that's one thing I guess to think about. But I'm fine with my failures because that's what's steering me.
I love that. What about you, Crystal?
Yeah, I think I agree with Jeremy in that tactically, it's very hard for me to. Honestly, I'm so happy with everything I've ever done, like in every experience I've had. But I think my thing that I wouldn't not have wanted to do is more around the mental space of what you decide to devote mental space to. And I think there's definitely energy, more of energy spent around like wishing something, and then you kind of think you want that wish, but then when you really look at it, you're like, well, that's not really who I am. And so I think sometimes, like a lot of times, we'll set these goals based on wishes for people out there, or not self-defined, not authentic to ourselves, and we'll spend all this like mental energy, like, hey, like, why can't I be like that person or that thing, or why can't I have that? And really it's like, no, I mean, you're you go do you. And so even if you're not really taking any action along those wishes, the brain space those wishes take up. Does that makes any sense? You know what I mean? Like the common example I've been using lately is I've always wished that I had a tribe of girlfriends that I see every week. And it's like, why you spend all this energy on that? If it isn't happening, it's not happening. Like, just move on. Like, you do you. You got your, we have like amazing network of friends across the world, and like that's awesome. Just leave it at that. And I think a lot of times that would probably be the thing I'd say I would not have wanted to do as much. And I find myself that's my biggest growth is coming from just not really wishing and really just embracing more of reality of who I am.
Yeah. I love that. Like the brain space and the brain capacity. I mean, there's only so much that your mind can hold. And what you're holding your mind is going to determine, what you say, what actions, what habits, what, trajectory you go to. And if we're more conscious about it, of what we allow in that and protecting that space, I think that's something, especially in recent years, where like self-development and mental health and all those things now became like, that was cool. Like before it was like, yeah, we kind of knew, but now it's like, ooh, mental health, yeah, self-development, yeah. Like now it's this kind of it's a cool thing. But how in practical terms, like how do you do that? It's like you're saying, like I know that you capture it. Like I know that I'm thinking this thing, it's not worthwhile, it's not leading me to my goal. Let me redirect that right to something else, something that's going to be more productive for myself or for my goals.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like, in all those kinds of buzzwords of mental health and self-development, the most important thing for me has been authenticity. And that's something like Jeremy's told me from the beginning of when we met, that he'd never met somebody who is so authentically themselves. And so anytime I feel myself straying from that, and that's where sometimes like these, wishes versus who I really am come out, like I think it helps being married to someone who believes in your authenticity so much, because it's almost an immediate like,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're not
Radar
being
is off. Yeah.
authentic, Crystal. Like
Yeah.
that's where all this is coming from,
That's
But
awesome.
I think, when we talk about self-development and mental well-being and things like that, to me, so much of unwellness
Yeah.
or not feeling well comes when you
Yeah.
have a misalignment between your inner and your outer
Mm,
worlds. And like the closer you bring those into alignment, just the better you feel overall. And I think that's
100%.
so important.
100%. 100%. I talk about um so I do at my day job, working at Adventist Health, I do leadership development. So I'm in the LNOD field myself. And for the leadership residents, part of our pipeline program, we teach them about different leadership competencies. So one of the things we were talking about earlier on was about trust and how you build trust. And part of that trust triangle, you might be familiar, is like you have three legs. You have authenticity, you have empathy, and you have logic. So in that trust triangle, that is how people, how you project yourself as trustworthy is, are you bringing your full authentic self? Are you empathetic, meaning that folks feel like you're here for them, you understand them, and you're bringing them along? And then logic, like, have you made good decisions? Like, do you have the track record to show? So like a combination of those three things shows that I was like, yeah, this person is deserving of trust in a very kind of algorithmic type of way. So
I
um
love that, Tim. And
yeah.
I think what's so fascinating about that is I've been thinking a lot lately about self-trust, because I run into a lot of people who it's not actually, you can't, how can you be trustworthy for someone else when you don't even trust yourself? And
Preach,
like it
Crystal,
starts with
preach.
you. And that three things you just said, that's huge. Like, are you bringing yourself to yourself?
Mm,
Or are you hiding your own needs and wants? Or
yeah,
just are you making decisions based on what you actually want, or are you
yeah.
people pleasing, or anxiety driven decision making is another topic mad
Yeah.
in my head right now. um
Anxiety driven decision making.
yeah,
Man.
because I hate that. I think it's like the opposite of
Yeah.
meaningful work
Yeah.
pursuits, meaningful life
Yeah.
pursuits.
Yeah.
So
Yo.
I would use
Um
that triangle on myself all day long. That sounds like a great analytical way to think about it.
That's it's a very easy assessment, and you find out they have the thing where they call like the wobble, right? So if you have all three, it's ideal, but nobody usually has all three like very strong, and you might wobble in one. Like so for me, I I'm probably not the most empathetic person, right? Being able to like feel, and I'm working on it, but like that would probably be like where my wobble is. And for some other folks, it could be, like I bring my full self to, like I'm very authentic, I'm very sincere, I'm always thinking about the other folks, but I don't make the best decisions, right? Like the track record
Sure.
is not always there. So you figure out what your wobble is, and you hone in on that, and you double down on the areas that you're really good at to kind of build those other foundations. So um man, you guys are bringing up like 5 6 other, like these are whole shows in and of themselves. This is why it's so good to have multiple people on like that. I'm going to start making this a habit. This is only the second time that we've done it where we've had multiple guests on the same show, but it is so filled with nuggets. But I do want to ask you something, Jeremy. So you shared that you were a CFO in a company. So have both of you worked in corporate, like as employees in organizations prior to venturing out on your own thing?
Yeah. So Crystal had a little bit longer of a career. She worked at Procter and Gamble for 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, I jumped around a little bit. I started at Ernst & Young, a big accounting firm, and then after a little bit, I noticed it wasn't really going the direction that I wanted my skill set to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I made a pivot to implementing cloud accounting software called NetSuite and Intact. So companies that outgrew QuickBooks, I would
Yeah.
go there and implement like a cloud accounting solution and migrate them into it so that it could streamline their accounting. And
Yeah.
then that opened doors for me to be consulting to CFOs, getting at that caliber level pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then I got an opportunity to be a CFO of a 130 employee, 7 location medical practice.
Nice.
And then from there, that's when I started my entrepreneurship journey after that. So I had a little bit of a career, and I jumped around a bit, and then Crystal
Yeah.
had a little more of a career and jumped around less. But yeah.
Nice. And what about you, Crystal? What was your experience in corporate life?
I think just what I would add to what Jeremy said is just that those first 3 years I was really working as an engineer. And then that's when I started discovering like, man, I really have a talent and passion for solving people problems. And I ended up negotiating a location free role as in the L&D space for engineering, and then eventually left. But as Jeremy mentioned, it was all really for Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
6 years, kind of didn't jump around too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And for you, Jeremy, what was that transition? So you're working, I mean, you're in a job. It's not a horrible job. I mean, you're doing pretty well. And but something is like, I want to do my own thing. Because I think for a lot of our listeners, a lot of our viewers are in corporate roles, they're working for organizations and trying to figure out like what is meaningful for them, like what drives them, what motivates them, how can they experience meaningfulness in the work that they're doing in their organizations. And oftentimes that sounds like leaving and doing your own thing, as coined a side hustle or what have you. So for you, what was that? Was it you weren't finding fulfillment there, or you just felt your drive somewhere else? Like, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I've been pretty focused on, I've wanted to be a CFO of a company and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And, I was working at a large accounting firm, and, I worked on, a couple dozen projects with a variety of public companies. And, I'm seeing that, I learned a lot, but what I'm doing is at such a granular level that I'm not learning like what's the full picture, because that's how corporate or large organizations work sometimes, or oftentimes.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, well, what out there exists that is fitting to what kind of skill set I would want?
Yeah.
And I did a bunch of research. I found, the most high-tech, most encompassing cloud accounting software that existed, called NetSuite. It had a full ERP, CRM system that integrates with each other, all these apps all online. So I was okay, like I want to get into that. Like that's the pinnacle of like the skill set that I'm trying to look for. And at the time, I'm pretty new out of college, and all the jobs in that field were requiring, 8 to 15 years plus minimum experience to even consider you.
Yeah.
So I
you have to start working at 7 years old. That's what they need you to do.
Right. So then, my way to that is like, I contacted every company in the country that did it, got turned down from everyone. I found a freelancer guy that was doing it on his own, and was like, hey, like, let me help you, or like, get involved somehow. And he's like, well, I don't really want to invest my time into upskilling you. So how about this? I know someone who you can get into a similar software. It's not quite NetSuite. You can get some experience. So then I sort of weaseled my way into that situation. But each time I'm taking these jumps, I'm taking big pay cuts. Like I'm going from, 20K pay cuts per jump that I'm making, but it's all for the experience. And so then I get some experience, and then eventually he starts his own thing. I migrate over to him, all on good terms, because they're friends who own those two businesses, and helped him get started, helped him implement his first projects, and so just navigating that whole system. But I wouldn't have known how to navigate it if I didn't know the end, where I was aiming at. And what I was aiming at was the CFO position that would lead to entrepreneurship, and what knowledge is necessary to be a good CFO. Well, you need to be very versed in accounting. Yeah. So accounting systems is a big thing. So migrating people that are outgrowing QuickBooks, which is a small accounting bookkeeping software, to enterprise level accounting would be a good spot to be in to get that skill set. And so I was just, laser focused on what I was aiming for, and that opened doors, and just being willing to make those sacrifices, especially as a young career person, opened doors as well for that.
Dude, I think the fact that you were so clear, you were, no pun intended, crystal clear on where you wanted to go. Like, so entrepreneurship was the goal, CFO was the goal, and so then you then mapped out the steps, the experiences, the competencies, the things that you needed in order to get there, even at the sacrifice of pay. Like the value transfer was not fiscal, it was like the experience.
100%. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, this is wild because that like changes the game. Like companies are used to like, oh, you come to us and you're gonna be with us, and like because we hold the paycheck. But there's folks in our generation that are like, nah, I'm here for the experience. Like, if I'm not getting it here, I'm gonna go find it somewhere else. And if the money is there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. But like this is where I'm going to. Like that is such a clear. And did you ever like at some point say like, you know what, I need to pivot, or it was nah, this is where I'm going, rain, sleet, sun?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty laser focused. I mean, even my degrees, I did accounting, finance undergrad. I did management information system for grad school. So I wanted to combine accounting and systems. So I was already thinking from that perspective.
Man.
And then just, from the beginning, I was aiming there. And, when I left Ernst & Young, I didn't have a job lined up, actually. I just knew it wasn't the right direction, but I had faith. But I had enough money saved to live to the end of my lease. So I was like, okay, I got a couple months to figure this out, to get another job. And I'll make this work. So I left my first job after college with nothing lined up. And then that's when I was like, okay, like, where am I, figuring this out? And that's when I was like, let me double down the whole NetSuite thing. Let me find a job in this space. And, but yeah, I mean, I jumped with no job lined up before. And, I went sort of on the extreme side of things, but I was, calculated risks, I guess you could say.
That's that as a good CFO should, calculating calculating the risk. And Crystal, what about you? I mean, you have a successful consulting company now. You're an author. You're a speaker. You're all over the place. Were you as clear like this is what I want to do, and these are the steps to get there? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, sort of similar. And this goes back to, again, just the relationship piece too of, I think like one of the great things about us meeting one another is that values piece, and, really valuing meaningful pursuits and authenticity and experience. Like a lot of things Jeremy's talking about, I'm like, yes, these are the things that like, other guys didn't have, like the strategic sense and the self-awareness and the drive for growth, and the knowing that money is not the main core of what drives either of us. I think that's that was really hard to find. And that goes back to those anxiety driven decisions. I think a lot of people do things out of fear of, the paycheck not being there, whether it's taking a risk at work or taking a risk like, both of us did leaving corporate. I think a lot of people tie their decisions back to, well, what if I don't make it? And like Jeremy and I never really, went there. And I think, so for me, like my transition, I think Jeremy was a lot more clear, like straight from the beginning of what he wanted. For me, I started out in engineering, and really, I actually had a lot of health issues when I started working. And so that became a really main driver for the rest of my life, right? Of becoming very self-aware around my energy and well-being. And that really ended up driving a lot of new strategies for me. Because I've always been a strategic thinker, but man, when you can't function as well, that really starts to put life in perspective of what's important to you. And so like my transition, really corporate space, there was two main things that were off about it for me. One was what we're seeing a lot of people burning out from now, which is back-to-back meetings. So the corporate environment really fatigued me, because I've always been somebody who thinks a lot about the why. I don't like to just focus on execution without thinking strategically. And so I would be like up at night thinking strategically about things, and during the day attending back-to-back meetings. So the work environment just kind of really destroyed my health. And I was like, it wasn't like today where there was Zoom, or there wasn't really a lot of location. There wasn't a lot of flexible work options back then. And then the second thing that really drove me was, at the end of the day, I realized as an engineer, I'm making an impact on the product, right, that my company produces. But what I really wanted was to make a difference with people. Like I wanted my full-time job to be about people and
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
And there wasn't space for that at P&G. So like these kinds of things. And then I started thinking really like 10 years, 20 years in the future, do I want to be, when I have a family, do I want to be in these back-to-back meetings, answering emails at 1 a.m. and all of that? There just wasn't really a lot of care in the
Yeah.
workplace at that time. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad to see that changing now. And so for me, I honestly sometimes I think like, man, if I had started out my career working at a nonprofit, location free or something like that,
Yeah.
which are possibilities now,
Yeah.
would I still be in the workplace making a difference, or would I be
Right.
out here? I don't know. I can't really answer that.
Yeah.
I'm happy, either way. Now I have great clients, right, that I
Yeah.
get to work with.
Yeah.
But I think those are some of the things that really drove me to make the transition. And
Yeah.
then in terms of the transition itself, I'm very much like Jeremy. It's like, what do I want, and what's the fastest way for me to get there? And so I started a side hustle originally around coaching, and um, my first thought was, let me experiment with
Yeah.
what's going to be viable business income, and coaching wasn't it. And I learned that over a year and a half of experimentation.
Yeah.
But then I came across keynote speaking, and I knew at the end of the day I wanted to consult. Like
Yeah.
that part I knew. When it came to change and stuff, I knew I wanted to solve a variety of
Yeah.
problems for people, and I was always going to be a problem solver. And the fastest way to become a consultant, well, when you're 25, you need credibility. And so when
Heck
I
yeah.
stumbled across keynote speaking, the first thing I did after giving just one talk at a Association for Talent Development chapter meeting, I applied to speak at a TEDx. And so
Mm-hmm.
this again, like, goes back to what Jeremy was saying, was what's the strengths and competencies I need, and
Yeah.
like how do I go after that
Yeah.
ASAP?
Yeah.
And so doing the TEDx talk just changed the game. Now I was like, okay, that's when I really learned this is a great way to not only build credibility but be authentic.
Yeah.
It's not just for the money, or
Yeah.
this is a way to actually make a difference.
Yeah.
And the keynote speaking led to consulting. It led to being able to, you know, develop models, put them out there in
Yeah.
training in the form of books, all of those kinds of things. So yeah, I've always believed life is really short, and that I don't want to build it around money. I want to build it around, experiences, and authenticity, that matter to me,
Yeah.
ultimately. So, and I'll just close by saying and because I know I'm kind of going on this, but I'm so passionate about it. There's a great author named Margaret Wheatley, and she wrote a book called Perseverance. She's written many books actually, but one of the things she says is, like in the landscape of all the possibilities of things you could do, what is it that's worthy of your perseverance?
What is
What is it?
worthy of your perseverance?
Yeah, what is worthy of your perseverance? And that just, I like, if I could sum up, she like summed up my philosophy on life so well when she said that. It's like, what is worthy of your perseverance? Um, yeah, I feel like I almost ask myself that, revisit that question anytime a new project comes up on my plate. That it's just it's that big of a question.
What is worthy of your
Perseverance.
perseverance?
And that goes, if you're in corporate or you're, out,
Right.
whatever, like,
Yeah.
it's in the moment. It's in the
Yeah.
day, in the moment of your day. Like, what is worthy of your perseverance? There's infinite things you could be doing. Why this? Like, why now?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, I'm a big proponent that life is short, and you only have so much time to learn certain things or to make impacts in certain ways, and that's very much in tune with that. If you are going to make an impact somewhere, it's got to be worthy of you to make an impact there, because
Yeah.
you could also make an impact somewhere else if you spent that time somewhere else. So it's like
It's the opportunity cost.
yeah,
Like you just
opportunity
gotta,
cost.
yeah.
and by the way, each of those things that you decide are worthy of your perseverance, if you're persevering towards it, you're going to make money at it. So I think that's the thing, is Jeremy and I, we really don't have that fear of financial insecurity, because it's not like, we almost say this to each other all the time. It's almost being worried about having too much success in a way, because we know if we put our minds to something, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So be careful, be careful what you take on.
If you put your boat in this direction, this is where we're going, and we're gonna get there. So
yeah, because we're gonna put in all those pieces that'll get us
Yeah.
there the fastest. So if you
Yeah.
take on like 10 projects tomorrow, watch out. 6 months
Yeah.
from now, you might be stuck in obligations for 10
Yeah.
projects that are
Yeah.
all doing fantastic.
Yeah.
And each of you who's listening to that, like, you're just as amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you'll figure those same sorts of things out
Yeah.
whenever if you give yourself the space to be super strategic and successful, and like, again, not like anxiety driven in
Yeah.
terms of your decision making, and using that little triangle Tim talked about. If
Yeah.
you like start doing those kinds of things, oh man, like, you might find out you're just as unstoppable. And then you really got to choose. You have to choose what you're going to work on, because it's all going to be successful. So be careful,
Those are what they call good problems.
Good problems to have.
Good problems to have. Random segue. I like to do just something random and fun. And then we'll go into our kind of final questions here before we wrap up for this afternoon. Is what is the last thing that made you laugh so hard your stomach hurt, or you're teared up? She's already laughing.
Because I can't say mine. I really cannot say mine because it just happened 2 hours ago.
Oh.
And it's making me blush right now. Like, oh man, Jeremy, if there's anything coming to mind for you, you go for it.
I'm trying to think of one that would be that I
Mine's
feel
like not
comfortable
safe for work.
saying publicly.
NSFW.
Mine is not safe for work. He hasn't even heard this yet, so now he's probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about.
This is gonna be for I had my son is I think it's always like with like kids are just like the source of eternal, and for like they're just entertainment just forever. And so we had soccer on this last Monday or last Sunday, and he's playing, and another guy was at the place watching soccer, like the Premier League, or like Manchester or Arsenal or somebody in the UK was playing, and the guy was saying, it's like, oh, he just scored a goal. He's like, they're playing football. And my son, he's 5, and he's like, it's not football. It is soccer. And this guy, I think he's from like East Africa or something. He's like, it's not football. He's like, no, what you guys are playing, that is not football. This is football. And just to see them like just arguing like about like soccer and football, like it was just, and I'm just standing, like I'm not stopping them, like they're just going at it, and I was just in tears. Like, yo, you can't argue with somebody about soccer. Like if somebody's passionate about football or soccer, there is no coming in between. It's a 5-year-old and like a close to 40-year-old guy talking about that was hilarious.
Yeah, I definitely I hear that. I don't know, Jeremy, if you got one. Mine's just not safe for work.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple that come to mind, but just I don't think I can share it here.
No worries, no worries. We'll laugh about it later. Hey, Jessica Mohammed in the building. Laura Dungo in the building. She says, thanks for sharing all your achievements and meaningful work. I wish you continued success. And Jessica is saying, how do you find the space to be strategic? How do you find the space to be strategic?
Yeah, and holla, Jessica, it's good to see your name. I haven't had a chance to talk to you in a while, but I would say liberally use the word no. Liberally set boundaries. Don't waste your time on things that are not essential. And actually, someone just recommended this book to me, Essentialism. I looked at the table of contents and I was like, I already do all this. So
is that the one with like the squiggly lines?
Like, yeah, take a look at the table of contents of Essentialism and see if there's anything you see in there, because I'll tell you, that book, it definitely goes through a lot of those kinds of pieces. But I would just say I really spend so much time figuring out what is essential for me to focus on versus not, and everything not essential, I let it go. And I say no a lot. So like Tim, for example, asked us if we have a hard stop at the end of the hour. And I just said yes, and he doesn't actually know, and now he's going to be wondering, do I have a hard stop or not? But that's called boundaries, Jessica.
Yeah.
That's how I do.
Yeah, and I would add to that that I'm a little bit more of like an immersive person. So for me, thinking strategic might mean like making a large major pivot in a situation, either with my life or business. And while working a job, some ways I would consider that would be to like use vacation days, but instead of going on vacation, actually intentionally using it towards thinking strategic. That's one way that if you feel overwhelmed in work, that they're not going to say no for you to taking vacation. So you can either do it on the weekends, maybe extend a weekend to a 3 or 4 day weekend, and maybe get away and have a way to sit down and just intentionally be strategic, think through what you need to think through, and maybe do a couple sessions of that to get to where you're trying to go.
And if you do have kids, I mean, we're about to start this journey, so I'm not one to give tons of advice yet. So, but this is kind of just where I see us going with it. Is I think it's okay for kids to do nothing and to be bored and to wait sometimes, and like, have that patience. So, just even thinking about how you take space from family, I think is really important. And I try to do that with my non-kid family right now, but it's important for kids to be able to figure out what to do when they're bored and have nothing. And Tim can probably speak to this more than we're this close to having that issue to where I feel like I could actually provide insight from. We kind of have a plan of, I don't know, Jeremy, sorry, I'm just going off on like unconfident advice giving, but this is like our plan, and I know that everyone has a plan for being parents, but
and then real life happens.
Yeah,
Jessica said that's a great idea. So I think your planning is
your plan is spot on. Jessica agrees. Well, yeah, I love that. Taking intentional time and setting boundaries, being liberal with your no, and being immersive in that. In our last minute here, how would you guys define meaningful work? If there was a dictionary according to Crystal and or Jeremy, what would that definition of meaningful work be for you guys?
I guess I can go since Crystal's just looking at me. I feel like she's looking at me. I would say, as far as meaningful work goes, like for me, it's like making a positive impact. So it's not just making an impact. If I work with people that aren't making a positive impact, I almost disassociate with them because they are doing it for reasons that I maybe don't agree with ethically. I think that if you work with someone, that person should be making a positive impact on you, or whatever you're doing should be making a positive impact for the human race as a whole. So that's sort of where that goes. And I would say, just since I have the stage right now, and unrelated to this, but if you're working in your job and like climbing a ladder, or you try to build a career in a certain direction, this is unrelated, by the way. I would say that a good thing to consider is to start sharing on LinkedIn. Like if you don't already create posts and post on LinkedIn, some good posts that you could be doing is like sharing your journey or a struggle that you're doing right now, or share something that you learned in your work, because you never know who's listening to that. And later in your career, if you're trying to make that jump to something else or trying to climb the ladder to another opportunity, you're going to come to mind from people who are friended with you on LinkedIn, and it's going to open doors for you. So especially knowing the audience that Tim has here, I think that if you aren't sharing on LinkedIn, then probably the biggest impact thing you could do that's very low effort is to just start sharing your learnings, sharing some milestones, just posting on LinkedIn, and that'll go a long way. And you'll see the results of that over the years that you're doing it.
You just leaned into your own definition of meaningful work, of making positive impact, because you just positively impacted these folks with this gem of advice of leveraging LinkedIn to just share your story, share your brand, and the effects that could have on your career trajectory and your climbing the ladder. So thank you for the definition and application. Crystal, the floor is yours. How would you define it?
Yeah, so this really ties back to authenticity. And, at the beginning of this call, I was thinking of something different, but to be very real with it, I've been thinking a lot about this and in my own life. And I realized that for me, I actually feel like I am seen so much more in my work, in my professional world. Like, I feel like the people I work with professionally, they really know me and they really
Mm.
see me.
Mm.
And I think if you find a role or a role right now or a role later, it doesn't have to be the same thing. I mean, I told you all earlier, like I get bored really easily. So it's not about the jumping around. Your passions change, who you are changes. But as you're changing, if you're in that role, you're making a difference where you feel so seen by people, like, oh, that's who she is.
Mm.
I mean, that's you found something really pretty meaningful.
Mm.
And I didn't really tie that to meaningful work until we had this conversation. But sometimes I feel like, people, my family and my friends, they might not actually even see me as much as the people I work with, because I'm so aligned in my work in terms of my strengths, the difference I want to make, the passion I feel, and those kinds of things. It's, obviously Jeremy sees me. I think we figured that out through this call. And people who know me know I geek out about Jeremy. So it's hard for me to do podcasts with him because I'm so geeky around him. But no, I mean, this is very real. Like, it's very real to me. Like, I think being seen is so important. And like, where I look at where I feel like I have the greatest voice, the greatest, like, I'm seen for me, it's in my professional life.
Yeah.
So if you found, activities you're doing in your role that make you feel that aligned,
Yeah.
that's so meaningful. And I would want that for everyone to have that feeling. It's pretty powerful.
Man, that is one of the when you are meaningful work, when you're able to be seen, truly seen in the work that you're doing. It reminds me of those memes. I don't know if you guys have seen those where it says what folks think I do. I'll have like one panel of like a job and then
Yes.
what I actually do, or like what my mom thinks I do, what my friends think I do. What I'm hearing from you, Crystal, is that those panels would all be the same thing.
Except on the
Right?
family and friends. Like, what my
Except for
family
the
thinks I do, what my friends think I do, but the
yeah,
people I work with, they know. None of us can probably put exact words on what the hell it is I
yeah,
do, but they
yeah.
all know.
But they know. But
Like,
they know.
this is what
Yeah.
she
If
does.
you know, you
This is who
know.
she
If
is.
you know, you know.
Yeah, I would add one thing to that. Just that I had a guest on my podcast, this guy Devon Brown, and he's a event MC, probably one of the best event MCs. He works with Tony Robbins and stuff. But he said that if you find something that resonates and makes a positive impact on someone, so what Crystal was talking about being seen with the work she's doing, maybe being seen with the work you're doing in your corporation, you're sort of ripping the world off, but not going bigger with it by sharing in bigger ways, because there's people out there who need to hear or see that to
Yes.
either be inspired or to do whatever they need to do, or get that impact. So you're sort of ripping the world off but not going bigger. So that's sort of a story that he
You're
gave a
saying
story of it.
don't cheat the world. Don't
Yeah,
cheat the
don't
world.
don't
Right.
cheat
Stop.
the
Stop.
world.
Don't cheat the world. Come on.
That
Stop
totally
ripping us
sums
off.
up all of our the whole conversation, all of our transitions. Like, I felt like I was cheating the world if I'd stayed
Yeah.
at P&G. I
Mm.
mean, hands down, I wanted this to be my full time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a great capstone, Jeremy. That's awesome. That reminds me of that
Man, this
conversation.
is such an inspirational pot. Like today's show was there were so many moments of enlightenment, and then just the chemistry between you guys. I just want to take it and put it in my I just love it. And so we're gonna wrap up here, guys. For folks that are still with us, Jessica, Laura, folks that are streaming with us on YouTube, Facebook wasn't working, but LinkedIn. We had Crystal with us. We had Jeremy with us. We had a phenomenal conversation. Check it out. It's gonna go right here on the feed. You can check it out on MrMeaningfulWork.com. What is the best way that folks can add value to you guys or engage with you guys? Like Crystal, if our audience could do one thing to engage with you, to add value to you, what would that be? Same thing for you, Jeremy.
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me know you heard this podcast. That's the best way. I always need the context. So yeah, let me know you heard me here, and happy to talk about any of the topics we talked about today, or just in general.
Perfect. What about you, Jeremy?
I'd say similar to that, or my podcast, or I guess the brand there is Why Influence, WHY Influence. So it's yinfluence.com, at yinfluence on Instagram, and all those things go to my phone. LinkedIn is good as well, except it's completely different brand sitting over there right now.
Yeah.
But at yinfluence is like, sort of my effort putting myself out there. And that's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. And we'll do show notes tomorrow. I'll just put a summary of what we talked about today and some of that contact information. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to wrap up today's I keep calling it late afternoon. This is the mid-afternoon show for me out here in California, but we had so much fun talking with you guys. If you have any ideas or if anything resonated with you, you can email me, tim@mrmeaningfulwork.com. That is tim@mrmeaningfulwork.com. We're excited to bring on another guest next Tuesday on the late afternoon show. But for now, we're going to sign off. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your week.